SpaceX is already racing towards Starship's next flight and first operational mission to orbit, all while still in the process of recovering the last. They've dropped a new astounding future preview of Terafab mixed in with Falcon 9 action. Indeed, even a previous flight made a big impact this week. On top of that, it seems as though the rest of commercial Space's hard work is starting to coalesce with action coming from all fronts. So, as always my friends, there is a lot to catch up on today.
Hey Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Hey, Marcus House with you here, and it has been quite the packed last couple of weeks with all the Flight 13 action going on and all those spectacular views which kept on trickling in. Last week, you may recall that SpaceX announced they were sending out a rescue ship for Ship 40. Well, I'm glad to be able to confirm with these awesome shots taken from Vantora's imaging satellites and published by CNN that Ship 40 is indeed still afloat above the Indian Ocean. Having softly splashed down just over 2 weeks ago now, it has travelled hundreds of kilometres away from its initial landing point, being carried away by the wind and wave currents, but the team followed it the entire way. They were eventually able to get it hooked up to a tow line, and as we can see here, they hooked it up to the aft end of the ship instead of the nose, as many had suspected. We assume they have hooked it around the booster and ship clamping interfaces, given that their design is great for looping a line around, and also most importantly, it's already a large structural component of the vehicle, so it can take the load. If you factor in the wind and wave currents fighting against the towing lines, they aren't able to move very quickly at all though, so even after this has been in progress during the week, the current estimated time of arrival at the port in Western Australia, which looks to be Dampier, could take weeks, but then is all obviously depending on the weather. SpaceX just yesterday on Friday gave us an update around how this progress is going, and unfortunately it doesn't seem to be going to plan. They've been overcoming challenging conditions and increasingly rough seas as they attempt to pull it the long journey to the port. You can see they've got marine fenders attached, which are essentially huge filled rubber cushions, which in this case would be helping Starship float in the right way to be towed and to absorb any impacts to prevent damage. Although the ship recovery is not looking good right now, SpaceX has been able to get loads of video and images of the heat shield to diagnose, so the exercise has been wonderfully useful regardless. It would be nice to see Ship 40 come home though, so I hope they can keep it moving. Now this port is around 1,250 kilometres or 780 miles north of Perth, which is the capital. The big question though is what happens to Ship 40 if it gets there? Will it be simply lifted onto a larger vessel and transported all the way back to Texas, or will a SpaceX crew head down, document it even further and dissect it, leaving only the important parts to be transported back? I'm hoping the former, of course, because we've never seen this process before. It's going to be interesting, I think, to see where we are at in a few weeks. Remember, thumbs up if you like this journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and these days you've also got to ring that bell as well to actually get notified. There is a lot of excitement as we wait for the next Starship Flight 14. Both the Super Heavy and Starship are still tucked away inside Mega Bay 1 and 2, getting ready for their static fire campaigns, but there is a new temporary flight restriction over masses which runs right through to the 20th. This is hopefully for Ship 41's static fire, so be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, we did get some pretty interesting information through the week thanks to SpaceX's quarterly earnings call. It was confirmed that they are still planning to go fully orbital in Flight 14, their first full Starship mission. They also confirmed they are still sending a stack of fully operational Starlink version 3 satellites to an operational orbit, and if everything has gone to plan, attempt a catch with Ship 41 with the Pad 2 tower for the first time. In fact, the only hurdle at this moment in time is getting regulatory approval for the catch attempt, so hopefully that is going to progress nicely. As far as we can see right now, a launch should still be on track for later this month. If they can pull it all off, including a catch, we should see that launch frequency pick right up even faster. I've seen a lot of debate online about how close the heat shield is for rapid use at this point. After all, we did certainly see a few broken tiles after splashdown. Well, in that earnings call, the heat shield was essentially described as a solved problem already after what had been seen in Flight 13, although admittedly, as also stated, SpaceX will continue to make improvements to it to further support full and rapid reuse. I mean, they also said that in a year from now, they would ideally like to have Starship flying at least once per day, if not more. Yeah, let me just break this one down. I mean, with all the Falcon missions, we watched SpaceX delivering about 2,500 metric tons to orbit in just the past year. With Starship, they say that they are aiming for 1 million tons to orbit per year and then even more after that. But that's just a little too far forward for me to really pay a great deal of attention to. But if you assumed 100 tons to orbit per launch, that would require about 27 flights per day. Yeah, I think we can put a pin in that one for now. Let's just think about one launch per day in a year's time. If you had a fleet of Super Heavies and Starships by that time, and they were already being reflown many times each, the main hurdle in my mind is not so much the Starship vehicles themselves, but the propellant and water supply. You would certainly need multiple launch sites in action, so there would need to be both fleets in Florida and Texas, and just look at Starbase in Texas alone. After a launch, they need to reset and bring in the hundreds of propellant and water tankers through before the launch site is ready to go again. They're not going to be able to do that in just a day or two. It would even be a challenge when the new air separation unit and methane generation systems are in place, which is still a good way off yet. Anyway, SpaceX are moving fast over all of their launch site infrastructure, so it's going to be interesting to see how quick they are really launching in 12 months' time. Even launching a few times a week would be a huge win in my opinion. Now with all that talk, they are also estimating that with the flight experience that they'll have with Starship by the end of 2027, they should have a safety record appropriate to launch crew. So yeah, things are about to get pretty crazy. So before Flight 14, SpaceX does seem to be making updates at Pad 2. They appear to need some additional burn plates down inside the flame trench, so the crew was seen throwing together scaffolding along the sides and was soon after welding in these giant plates. We are not sure if this is a permanent change coming to all the launch pads under construction or whether this is just a temporary fix for now. It is certainly not an unusual thing to see new updates to this design, given that we have just seen the second flight from this pad. If it is a change to be rolled out to the other pads, thankfully these are all under construction, so any modifications needed should be easily slipped into those. Speaking of, Pad 1's transformation is still progressing at Texas at this crazy speed over this past week. SpaceX's LR-11000 crane has been reassembled and raised again after the many months of refurbishment. This will give the other Buckner LR-11000 crane over here a chance to lay down to get its taller configuration assembled. This, once it rises again, will be used to lift the new tower roof into place, which has been sitting back here. This week, they were attaching the fencing around the edges, so it is almost ready to go. Now, where SpaceX removed the remaining sections of the ship quick disconnect arm last week, after slicing that up to be taken away, thanks to this awesome perspective by RGV aerial photography, we can see there is nothing left but a pile of scraps. Over here you can see the Drawworks bunker sections that were being stacked up beside the tower are already being moved into place at the base, so it won't be long before we see the gigantic motor hoist system return to allow those arms to once again be on the move. Now, this important piece for the deluge system arrived at the launch site this week. This section of steel goes right across the middle of the flame trench, and this is what supports both the deluge bucket halves and the apex on top as seen on Pad 2. Heading to the build site, in front of the rocket garden, SpaceX has staged all sorts of pieces which appear to be for the Gigabay workstands. We seem to have pieces for 2 workstands actually, and a single set of walkways for one of these stands over here. If we zoom right in here, the stand on the left seems to have a hole big enough for that super heavy transfer tube. Then the stand on the right looks to have cutouts for the upper stage Starship's single center transfer tube, along with the 3 outer transfer tubes. I think it is really exciting to see some of the new stands. It's going to help make constructing these monsters even faster. Now, to send a Starship off for a Florida launch at some point this year, we hope, the super heavy breakover fixture, which was previously sitting over here for its construction, was quite interestingly moved over to the staging area beside the megabays this week, so it is likely about complete and waiting for its first use. You may recall Gwen Shotwell had recently mentioned that Flight 15 could be the first from 39A, although I suspect it is a little further away than that. Regardless, I think it is going to be a really strange thing seeing a vehicle laid down for the first time preparing for transport. Well, apart from the one that is already floating around out there right now. With all that, Gigabay has come along quite far over the past month. The little LR1300 crane down here has been busy getting that cladding completed, and more than half of this building is covered at this point. The 4 tower cranes above are quickly pushing through those last lifting operations with the trusses for the roof installed now. So yeah, SpaceX are even starting to remove the wall along the edge of the Star Factory. Here, we should see them construct an extension to join the two megastructures together. Sadly, once they close the door at the back of the Gigabay, we are finally going to lose those views into the ring yard, and this alleyway is our last decent view into Megabay 2. Not for much longer though. On the bright side, flight activity is going to be happening much more frequently, so there's still going to be plenty to cover. Now, at the Massey's test site, we do have a little to report this week. I'll come right back to that, but first, a huge thanks to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring today's video. We actually went on holiday a few weeks ago, and one thing that I was reminded of every single day was just how many random Wi-Fi networks you end up connecting to when you're travelling. You've got airports, accommodation, and event venues. Before long, you've connected to all sorts of networks that you know absolutely nothing about. I mean, you can never be totally confident that there isn't some fake Wi-Fi hotspot set up by someone trying to trick people into connecting. So whenever I'm jumping onto a network I don't know, the first thing I do is switch on Surfshark VPN, and this creates a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. So yeah, whenever I'm just checking emails, uploading files, doing a bit of banking, or just browsing while I'm away, I know my connection is protected without really having to think too much about it. It's also incredibly useful for another reason. Websites, services, and even news sites that worked perfectly back home can suddenly become unavailable just because you're in a different region. With Surfshark, I can simply connect through a server back home and carry on using the internet like I normally would. There is just so much bundled in with the service too. Take the cookie pop-up blocker that will improve your browsing experience by limiting annoying pop-ups, or the web content blocker to filter out specific website categories that you can select from a provided list. The best part is that with one Surfshark subscription, you can cover unlimited devices, so you can protect your phone, tablet, and laptop without needing separate accounts. So if you'd like to check it out for yourself, head to surfshark.com/Marcus or use the code Marcus to get 4 extra months. You can also scan the QR code right there on screen to get started. Thank you, Surfshark. Okay, so back to the Massey's test site. We've had the rollout of a super heavy grid fin test rig of some sort, and this has multiple actuators. This has been placed beside their work building here. Nearby, we see half a grid fin with some attachment points, so they can connect this to the actuators. It also has a motor, so they'll presumably give it a good stress test and prove that the design works exactly as expected. Speaking of stress tests, the brand new nose test article S43.1 was lifted off the turntable and rolled out to Massey's toward the end of the week, and the ground crew quickly got it lifted into the Super Crusher. Just to put into perspective how long it has been since they last built a proper nose cone test article like this, here in the testing cage was Starship serial number 12's nose cone back in 2021, which was taken off the production line and repurposed after serial number 11's destructive end. Man, a lot has happened in 5 years, and I imagine the list of items they want to stress test here is extensive. Now, just to top it all off on the Starship side this week, SpaceX announced their plans for this insane Terafab project. Check this out. SpaceX posted this animation along with an update on their website, giving us an idea just how monstrous this facility could be. We were treated to a couple of views, but this one from a distance is showing a scale that will be extraordinary if it becomes reality. This monstrous construction fits into the location they have chosen right here in Grimes County, Texas. This plan is for around 100 million square feet when finished. That is a staggering 9.3 square kilometres or 3.6 square miles. It's hard to comprehend that. I mean, we're talking about a 10 times larger footprint than Tesla's biggest gigafactory in Texas. The multiple highway interchanges connecting to the highway running down the centre is an interesting choice, I will say, but this mock-up is something that almost looks alien. The reason for this structure, of course, and the main problem that they are trying to solve here, is producing compute capability. If the compute requirements continue on their current path, we need a lot more manufacturing in place. I mean, those of us that love gaming will know full well how ridiculously expensive certain hardware is becoming, so bring it on. Do you think SpaceX may reserve one little slice of this monstrous production to make some chips for the PC gamers out there? Well, that response there was, I think, a positive one. SpaceX is aiming to not just add compute capability to the markets, but become a monster player in this space, especially if you're looking at services rolling out for the next generation Starlink constellation, and then their even larger data center dreams. The future is pretty wild to watch playing out. On to SpaceX's Falcon 9 action. The first away this week was Starlink Group 1753 on Tuesday morning from, you guessed it, the often foggy Vandenberg Space Force base, and this was no exception, with just the sound of the roar and the orange glow there as the only clues that it was away. A few nice photos were shared by SpaceX later all the same, and this was a well-loved booster number 1063, and it was touching down for its 34th time just minutes later on the drone ship Of Course I Still Love You. Next, they were sending up a set of the Block 2 Bluebird satellites for AST SpaceMobile in their 1113 mission. This is actually SpaceX's third mission for AST SpaceMobile, and packed inside those fairings they cram 3 of those satellites, which in this case was on top of booster 1077 flying for its 30th time. There was that landing there on the drone ship a shortfall of gravitas, and interestingly, due to the layout of the payload adapter, there isn't really anything to see at deployment. Because of that obstructed view, SpaceX just ended the stream right after the touchdown, so yeah, the successful satellite deployment was just confirmed a little later. Now, along with that Falcon 9 action, something much further away. You may have seen the sensationalised story about the Falcon 9 crashing into the moon this week. Well, indeed, just a few days ago, an old Falcon 9 second stage did impact the surface as the schedule predicted. This was actually the stage responsible for launching the incredible Blue Ghost 1 mission that I mentioned earlier, along with iSpace's Resilience lander. These were thrown way up into a high orbit to get the most of the way to the moon back in January of last year. After that second stage was spent, at this distance there is really no propellant left that would allow a controlled disposal manoeuvre. Instead, it was left to naturally end up being pulled in over all that time in an uncontrolled lunar impact. This cool video shared by Jose Maria and the team captured the spread of ejected material from the crash, and out there from orbit, the Korean Tunnery spacecraft captured some neat images of the crash too, and here is a great before and after comparison of that. Okay, so we have some more exciting moon base updates for us all this week with a new video from NASA. Working toward building a permanent moon base is no small task, and it's going to take more than 20 lunar landings for the first phase alone. Each of these missions will send new equipment, technology, and science that gradually builds up the outpost, and we're finally starting to see all that hardware come together. Over on the west coast, Astrobotic, which was recently acquired by Voyager Technologies, have their Griffin-1 lander arriving at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California for environmental testing. This, as you may recall, is targeting the lunar South Pole, and it's going to carry 10 items on board, including Astrolab's Flip rover. Right now, the spacecraft is mounted on a mass properties fixture where engineers are carefully measuring its total mass, centre of gravity, and more. All that data is essential before the lander is launching later this year aboard a Falcon Heavy, and I'm super excited about this mission. Moving on to the east coast though, Blue Origin is also making progress with their Blue Moon Mark 1 lander after the thermal vacuum testing earlier this year. After having been shipped back to Cape Canaveral, the team has verified the compatibility with both NASA's Tracking and Data Relay Satellite Network and the Deep Space Network. They've also tested how the lander behaves during separation from New Glenn, completed acoustic testing, and soon they will begin testing the cryogenic propellant system. The actual BE-7 flight engine that is going to power the lander to the lunar surface has even had the successful fit checks done, so this is great news even if we are going to be awaiting the repairs of the launch site for quite some time. Blue Origin shared some information from the investigation mid-week actually. They've reported that there was a fault in the main oxygen valve on one of the BE-4 engines which led to that explosion. They are now testing all BE-4s to understand this issue better and have already made modifications to the valve. They believe they can retrofit the repair to the existing engine, so I'm sure there is plenty of testing to come. The launch of the Blue Moon Mark 1 lander is currently expected to happen in the first quarter of 2027, so we hope all these repairs and improvements stick to that timeframe. There is so much fun stuff on this mission with several NASA payloads of course. I'm looking forward to the stereo cameras for Lunar Plume Surface Studies, or SCALPS. That is going to record the BE-7 engine's exhaust interacting with the lunar surface, and that data is going to be incredibly valuable for tweaking the design of the future and much heavier lunar landers. Meanwhile, just north of Austin, Texas, Firefly Aerospace is preparing that second lander mission to the moon with Blue Ghost 2 taking shape. The lander is fully stacked and the team is getting ready to install the electronics and payload units. I mean, this is just the lander itself here, and before launch it's going to be stacked on top of the Elytra orbiter. Together they are going to make a 22-foot or close to 7-meter tall spacecraft. That's more than 3 times the height of their first lander, by the way, and I can't wait for this mission because it is landing on the moon's far side, hence the requirement for the Elytra orbiter to communicate with it. We also have the Lucy Night payload, which is an interesting one given that this is a radio astronomy telescope. The moon itself blocks all the radio interference coming from Earth, so this will give scientists an incredibly quiet environment to study all those signals from the cosmos. In Houston, Intuitive Machines is assembling their third Nova C lander for the IM-3 launch, and this is coming together nicely with the methane tank mounted on top and the oxygen tank below. It's a pretty amazing thing to see 3 missions being prepared at once. It's just a few of the steps toward turning NASA's moon base plans into reality, but they are now also teaming up with Northrop Grumman on 3 new lunar technology demonstrators that will begin during Artemis Phase 1. The idea here is to repurpose the power, avionics and communications hardware that was originally developed for the old Gateway program's Halo module. They will then test those systems on the lunar surface instead, so yeah, it's a smart way to reuse proven hardware and test out the tech needed for future Artemis crews and robotic missions. With all that, a few quick bursts of information for you this week too. Axiom Space shared these stunning views of astronauts training for geological exploration of the moon, but underwater. Indeed, 2 NASA geologists and Artemis science officers suited up together inside NASA's Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory to practice the kind of geological fieldwork that they plan to do on the lunar surface itself. During this session, they tested prototype geology tools and deployed a mock lunar payload. They even did this under low-angle lighting designed to simulate something quite similar to the harsh lighting conditions near the lunar South Pole. It is all helping NASA refine the processes and equipment ahead of Artemis 4, and man, I hope we get to see a lot of video from these exercises because a few images just doesn't do it enough justice. With that, Relativity Space has had the first stage of their Terran R vehicle qualified. This test article went through all the structural qualification stress testing, including 420 pressure cycles. Actually, while pressurised, they even compressed it with 4.3 million pounds or close to 2,000 metric tonnes of force. With that success, they can move on knowing that Stage 1 tanks are ready to withstand that expected load from ground operations, launch and flight. We have more great news from Rocket Lab because they have been awarded a $397 million contract by the US Space Force to build what they are calling flatelites. Yes, they are good with their naming, I'll give them that. They are going to build multiple advanced flatellite spacecraft for the SBAMTI program to be launched, as you can probably tell, on board Neutron. Sadly, we may not ever get to actually see them given that these are for the Space Force, but it is nice to see Rocket Lab already getting these contracts with Neutron. Still hoping that we could see that maiden flight before the end of the year, but there is still a lot to be done. With that news, we've just watched Electron fly again, finally after that weird abort a little over a month ago. Unfortunately, Rocket Lab didn't provide us with any additional information about that abort, but there it goes on this mission named the Grain Goddess Provides. It was carrying another radar satellite for IQPS, and they are still contracted to launch 10 more of these radar satellites, ending with 36 in the constellation. Strangely, we didn't get any onboard views from the ascent until after stage separation. Later on though, the kick stage successfully deployed the QPS SAR-13 satellite at the 50-minute mark, wrapping up another packed week. So there you go, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit subscribe so we get to keep making them. Again, a massive thank you to Surfshark VPN helping us make these videos what they are. If you want to continue with more space goodness, check out this video here if you missed it. Thanks for watching all this way through. As always, I'll catch you next weekend.